Hey family, welcome back to the channel. Alright, so it's Father's Day and I'm reading my Megillah, being blessed with the stories of Yahshua. And again, I wanted to share some more with you from this chapter 101. But I got all the way to verse like 125. An example of green wizardry or green magic that is performed in the context of white magic would be the act of holding some seeds in the palm of your hand and affirming the following words or something similar. Jah in Yah, earthly mother, and all the tree of life angels, I pray that these seeds will be fruitful, that I may have an abundance of food to share with those that are homeless and hungry. He says that prayerful enchantment is an example of green magic, also called green wizardry, or natural magic, in that it includes an element of nature, the seeds held in the hand. That prayerful enchantment is also an example of green wizardry and white magic because the purpose of the green magic is to do something good. In this case, not only to provide food for myself or my friends and family, but also enough to share with the needy. He keeps going. Verse 128, another example of green wizardry and white magic, this is one in regards to preparing the soil, is to recite the following words while holding some soil in your hand. O Adamel, holy angel of soil, teach me to work with the garden soil in a positive manner, so that I may grow an abundance of food to share with others. So there are a lot of instructions in here. I'm just going to skip though all the way to teachings from Beten Jahlah. Yes, so in Joseph's garden he tells us that he had many visitors, and he also has a ton of stories about Yahshua when he was a young boy, 6 years old, I think 12 years old. The first one starts in verse 148. Child Yahshua lifts the spirit of an old woman via a garden walk and the magic of mint. The next story is Child Yahshua, a cat, and garden catnip. It says here's a Joseph's account of Child Yahshua helping a homeless man in the garden. It says here in verse 211, once when at age 7 Yahshua brought a homeless man to our garden and let him pick figs to eat in exchange for pulling some weeds. Afterwards, though I suspected I knew the answer, I asked Yahshua, son, why didn't you just give the man some figs from our storage room? For as Yahshua knew, we had just picked a large number of figs earlier that morning, far more than we could eat. Yahshua replied, Father, when I met this man, I felt that he needed the work even more than he needed the figs. Man, out of the mouth of babes, right? Because Yahshua was 7 years old when he said that. So there's some more, but unfortunately I'm going to skip them. And maybe one day I will get them up there, but I kind of want to get back on to the teachings about Yahshua's Hatha Yoga and stuff. And so this is in that direction. So Father Joseph ends up telling us that in verse 244, one of the great joys that I, Joseph, have gotten from being a gardener has been sharing the garden with my family. Another great joy has been the visits of many wise sages of Nasarean and various other spiritual traditions. Before concluding this scroll, I will share just one of those many wonderful conversations that have occurred with sages in my garden. This visit was especially fun because it involved 3 sages, a Buddhist monk, a Hindu monk, and the great Nasarean yoga teacher, Beten Jahlah. Even back then, Beten Jahlah spent most of her time at the Nasarean encampment in India. On this visit, Beten Jahlah was visiting the home of her newly widowed mother near Mount Carmel, for she had learned of her father's recent death. The Buddhist monk and the Hindu monk were both dear friends of Beten Jahlah in India. Each of them lived near Berekyah, and on hearing that she was to journey from India to her far distant homeland of sacred Mount Carmel, asked if they could come along for the adventure, the learning experience, and also to protect her on the long journey. Wow. Happy to have their company, Beten Jahlah told them, "You may accompany me on one condition. You must each agree to tell me a joke somewhere along the trail." Okay. Beten Jahlah loved and respected both of these celibate monks, but had not seen them laugh much and had never heard them tell a joke. Upon hearing her one requirement, the two monks looked at each other and started laughing. Hallelujah. Their eyes shone with realization. They realized that Beten Jahlah had noticed how extremely serious they each were, and that she was hinting that they might relax and laugh and play a bit more often. Being very wise, they both realized that she was right. Though it had never been specifically spoken between these three friends, the two monks, while remaining dedicated initiates of their own religions, had both begun to accept Beten Jahlah as their spiritual senior, perceiving that she was a more advanced yogi and more exalted guru than anyone they had ever met. These two monks were considered too unorthodox by most of the other monks of their religions. And it is true that they were very unorthodox monks. That truth is made evident by their willingness to not only freely converse with a female, but even to travel with one. Then add the fact that this woman or travel companion was of a different religion, and, well, these monks were fortunate that their respective orders just considered them very unorthodox and had not expelled them. The reason for that leniency was that these two monks were also known to be amongst the most respected scholars, yogis, and martial artists of their generation. For that reason, their unorthodox behavior was tolerated, barely, when the same actions by other monks would have likely resulted in expulsion. Beten Jahlah had required that both the Buddhist monk and the Hindu monk would tell her a joke on the trail. The term "the trail" refers to anywhere you choose on this long journey from India to Mount Carmel. The Hindu monk told the following joke to Beten Jahlah and the Buddhist monk. The initiatic name of this Hindu monk was Yogi Samadhi. Yogi is a term for one that practices yoga in a disciplined long-term manner, and Samadhi is the highest spiritual sense recognized in Hindu yoga. Okay, so Yogi Samadhi. And then the initiatic name of this Buddhist monk was Samana Dharma. Samana is a Buddhist term for monk. Dharma refers to the highest spiritual concept of universal law or ultimate moral truth, expressed appropriately at each level of reality and in each incarnation of a soul. So Beten Jahlah was friends in India with two of the greatest, it said. Now I just want to read about the portion where Beten Jahlah shares some of her Yoga Sutras in the Garden of Joseph. So exciting, right? I wanted to talk about Beten Jahlah's parents right before we get started. That's one of the reasons why I'm skipping the stories from the monks. This video should be titled Beten Jahlah. I think it's appropriate for us to have Joseph tell us about what a great Sabbath is. It says in verse 3:11, "Although it was not planned in advance, it so happened that the three travel companions arrived the day before a great Sabbath service was to be held at the Mount Carmel Nasarean Temple. They arrived at the family farm of Mary, Yahshua, and I, Joseph. While any Sabbath day of the year can be great, In regards to spiritual joyfulness and other qualitative experiences, there are 7 Sabbath days per year that are designated by the official term, Great Sabbath. The first Great Sabbath of each year is always the 7th Sabbath of that year. From that point on, every 7th Sabbath throughout the year is designated as a Great Sabbath. There are 7 of those per year. While there may or may not be any more potential spiritual power inherent in those 7 particular Sabbath days than any other day, that can be debated. One reason that a great Sabbath service is typically an extra wonderful experience is the simple yet profound magic that everyone involved expects it to be special. Do you know what I mean? The shared group expectation conjures such things as ideas to make the day special by having some special music and a shared meal, maybe even a dance experience or a drum circle, extra special sermons, and sometimes guest speakers. So all of this information about a great Sabbath day is just to point out that Beten Jahlah and her 2 traveling companions had arrived at my farm the day before a great Sabbath day, which seemed a splendid occurrence. They were able to bathe and feast with us on fresh garden produce, get a restful night of comfortable sleep, then attend the Mount Carmel Nasarean Temple service on a great Sabbath day that was expected to be extra special. For this was the 7th great Sabbath of the year, the 7th of the 7. In other words, very 7. The group from my farm that attended this 7th great Sabbath day of the year service at the nearby Mount Carmel Nasarean Temple happened also to be 7 in number. Mary, Yahshua, and myself, the 2 monks from India, plus Beten Jahlah and her newly widowed mother. Beten Jahlah and the monks had picked her mother up on the way to my farm the previous day. The name of Beten Jahlah's mother was Mazorath, a plural word that means all the scattered stars of the constellations. That's beautiful. Mazorath, all the scattered stars of the constellations. In her case, it was an initiatic name linked to the fact that she was a noted astrologer of the Nasarean variety and was also an expert on the forms of astrology practiced in other traditions. Most those traditions having borrowed from the Nasarean variety before being altered to fit different cultures, religions, and levels of scientific understanding. For lo, the Nasarean understanding of the stars of the heavens and various things of astrological star logic significance was far greater than that of the cultures that were influenced by Nasarean astrology. I also want you to know that the father of Beten Jahlah, the dearly departed husband of wizardess Mazorath, his name was Yoreh, which means enlightened by Yahweh, and he was a renowned Nasarean wizard. Indeed, Beten Jahlah came from a long line of wise ones. After attending the congregational worship service at the Nasarean temple associated with the Mount Carmel region, which was not far from my farm, we returned to my, Joseph's farm, around midday. Verse 383. As the 7 of us sat in a sacred circle in this beautiful garden, Beten Jahlah told us the story of she and the Buddhist and Hindu monks' long journey. She then gave the following teaching to us. Beten Jahlah said, I am currently writing a text on Essene Yoga that will be titled Sutras of Union. The words that I share are from that text. Because we are sitting in a garden, I feel that the following verses from that text are appropriate. For these verses liken the human mind to a garden. Om. Here follows instructions in Essene Yoga. Essene Yoga is holistic. It cultivates the physical and subtle bodies, perfecting body, mind, emotions, and soul. Om. Here follows instruction in Essene Yoga. The first step is to decide to devote your time and energy to becoming an Essene yogi. Until then, You are not ready to begin this particular activity. Everything that you have done and will do prepares you for this great decision. When ready, nothing can hold you back. Beten Jahlah paused and said, I will skip ahead to the point in the text where the mind is likened to a garden. Om. Here follows Essene Yoga instruction on the cultivation of your mind. Once you have made the general great decision to dedicate yourself to the spiritual path and have also made the specific great decision to become a Nasarean Essene Yogi, behold, the time has come to truly cultivate your mind by embracing the yamas and niyamas. Yea, a new Essene Yogi begins with vigorous study and diligent practice of the yamas and niyamas in the overall context of the entirety of Essene Yoga. I like to say yoga. Om. Before, you may have dabbled in the yamas and niyamas, but now you have made your mind up to fully engage with them, albeit appropriately in regards to your age and other life situations. Be always appropriate and gentle, even while challenging yourself to be vigorous and diligent. Om. You, the self, the I am that wears a series of bodies, the most subtle of which is the spiritual body, called the soul, now choose to experience union in samadhi. By holistic self-cultivation of each body, your mind must be cultivated immediately because it can be your greatest friend or worst enemy in self-cultivation of each and every body. Om. As an Essene Yogi in regards to your mental body, you are now truly a willing gardener. Every gardener uses certain tools. The yamas and niyamas are important tools of the Essene Yogi, who is now the willing gardener of his or her own mind. Om. The uncultivated mind is like an uncultivated vegetable garden, full of weeds. Its fruits are small and sour. Be a skilled gardener of your own mind. Your mental fruits will be large and sweet. Beten Jahlah paused and said, Now, for an appropriate period of time, let each of us in this sacred circle contemplate in sacred silence the ways in which the human mind is similar to a garden. I, Joseph, the author of this scroll, hereby invite the reader to now perform the same act of contemplation. Yes, this is an interactive scroll, guys, if you didn't know that. But next, coming up is some stories from the Hindu monk and then the Buddhist monk. And so it's going to get us right back in line with the yoga, Essene Yoga, and the teachings that I wanted to continue with. I wanted to do Yahshua's Hatha Yoga routine. And so we're going to get that up here eventually, maybe by the end of the summer. But right now we're going to just leave it there. This is so good. So now we know a little bit more about Beten Jahlah. Wow, and that was something about her mother, Mahabharata. It says that her name meant all the scattered stars of the constellations. It was an initiatic name linked to the fact that she was a noted astrologer of the Nasarean variety and was also an expert on the forms of astrology practiced in other traditions. This is important. Most those traditions and those other traditions having borrowed from the Nasarean variety before being altered to fit different cultures, religions, and levels of scientific understanding. Because we're taught in chapter 28, you might want to go and read about that. That's where Beten Jahlah was explaining to Yahshua when he came to India. And now we know they met when he was a little boy. Pretty cool, right? Alright, so I'm going to get on out of here. But yes, be back soon. Thanks for watching.